Hey everybody. So for those who saw my top 10 best of the year for 2013 and for those who saw my top 5 worst of the year for 2013, I'm going to do something that I didn't do for the 2012 cinematic year that I want to do for this one because I do know some other YouTube channels and things of that nature like to do things like this. I'm going to do something called a number 11 list. And what that is, are these are runner-up films that didn't quite make the top 10 list that are really good films that I really think should be mentioned and not really praised per se, but just films to kind of look back on the 2013 year and be like, you know what, that was a really good movie. I really liked that one. These are films, like I said, that didn't quite make my top 10 list. I didn't think they were that good, but they're very good movies. Like I said, they deserve to be mentioned for the 2013 cinematic year. These are very well made movies. But like I said, they just weren't quite good enough to be in the top 10. But I did want to give them some honorable mentions. So I'm going to share with you some titles that came out in 2013 that I really enjoyed. They got at least an 8.5 or higher. And I really enjoyed these films, but like I said, they just weren't quite good enough for a top 10 list. So we're going to start at the bottom of the list. We have Now You See Me. I really enjoyed this film, you guys. I actually didn't get around to seeing it until around New Year's time. My parents and I rented that from Redbox, and I was actually pleasantly surprised with it. It had a very good take on magic tricks and heist films, and it meshed the two together very well. And the acting was very good in it. It was very well presented. I liked the smart alecky attitudes of these characters, and Morgan Freeman's always a great person to watch in a movie. So Now You See Me that doesn't even make it into anywhere. These are just honorable mentions. So no numbering for this one at all. So the Hunger Games Catching Fire is the next one. Really good movie. I really enjoyed it. I didn't think it was quite good as number one, so I think that will ultimately didn't make it to my top 10 list. So really good movie though. The setup is really good in it. It's definitely a better setup than part one was. But I thought the overall Hunger Games themselves, the Hunger Games event itself, just didn't seem as fun as the first time around. I know everybody hated the shaky cam in the first one, but um, I got to be honest, the first Hunger Games was a little bit more exciting to me. So another film I really enjoyed in 2013 was The Great Gatsby, the 2013 remake. Baz Luhrmann did a terrific job with this movie. Leo DiCaprio and the cast did a terrific job acting in the movie. This is a film, too, where the content and the style and the substance were all very good in it. It definitely was a very impressive looking movie, very bright, very colorful. The colors stood out in this movie very much. From what I know about the Great Gatsby story, it seemed to follow it pretty well. Um, just a really well done movie, but not quite good enough to be in my top 10, though. Fast and Furious 6 is another film I really enjoyed in 2013. Very good action scenes, very good storyline. Justin Lin further proves once again that he knows how to make a good Fast and Furious movie. Forget about the first four films. Just watch Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6, the one I'm talking about here. Very good movies. Definitely sets up for Fast and Furious 7, which I know is a little bit on delay right now because of Paul Walker's death, unfortunately. But Fast and Furious 6 is a very good movie. Just one to mention for 2013. It's a very good movie. This film definitely was nowhere near to be found on my top 10 list. I would never dream of putting it up on there, but I thought it was a very good movie. I think it's worth mentioning is Iron Man 3 by Shane Black. Though I wish John Favreau would have directed this film, I think if Favreau returned for a third Iron Man film, I think it would have been even better. Just a few twists and turns in it that I really didn't care for. But overall, the film's very well made. It looks good. The action scenes are fun for the most part. Just a lot of things about it that I didn't really approve of, so it didn't quite make it to my top 10 list. Another film that people are actually mad at me about for not putting in my top 10 list that I liked it, but I didn't like it that much was The Wolverine by James Mangold. I love James Mangold. I loved Copland from him. Very good movie. Um, just not quite good enough to be in my top 10 list. I really didn't think it was that good. It does have a lot to say about immortality and mortality and how it's a curse and um, some interesting mutants appeared in it and stuff. But I personally thought it had a little too many villains in it. Just there's a few little nitpicks I have about it that really are quite noticeable, to be honest. So, but Wolverine's a very good movie. It's worth mentioning for the 2013 year. It's a very good movie. And then these five titles I'm about to mention next, these films are very, very close to my top 10 list. In fact, for a while they were on the list, but one of the films that I actually did eventually put on my top 10 list knocked these off at some point. So I'll share some of those with you. One of them is Thor 2 The Dark World. Really impressive film, a little generic at times, but very good Marvel film. I thought it was very well made. It was a lot of fun. Just not as fun as some of the top 10 films I mentioned on my top 10 list. So Pacific Rim's another one. I have a few friends of mine that actually put that film on their top 10 at one point. So um, really enjoyed the film, but like I said, just not good enough for a top 10. It just there's a few storyline elements that were a little weak in it, I thought, but action wise, CGI wise, it was fine. It was great to see a kaiju film on the big screen again. So very good movie. Another one was Oz the Great and Powerful by Sam Raimi. Very good film, very good prequel to The Wizard of Oz. That film was actually on my top 10 list for a while, but it got knocked off after several other good films came out. So, but very impressive. You could definitely tell Sam Raimi still has it in him. He's a very good director. He's very good about style and substance. He knows, what's too much CGI, what's too much of this, what's too much storyline. He knows how to blend storyline and the special effects together very well, I think. And Oz the Great and Powerful is very, very much proof of that. I know a lot of people didn't like Spider-Man 3, but I really enjoyed that one from Sam Raimi. But Oz the Great and Powerful is once again another really good Sam Raimi film that he made. So, but like I said, just not good enough for a top 10 list. Like it almost made it on there, but didn't quite make it on there yet. So this film was actually on the list for a while, and it did get knocked off by a few other titles. Was The Hobbit Part 2, The Desolation of Smaug. Very good movie, very good continuation of the first Hobbit film. I thought Peter Jackson very much fixed his mistakes that he made in Part 1 of The Hobbit. But the overall, it's just, I think what really made it not be in the top 10 for me was the fact that it's just still not as good as The Two Towers and Return of the King. I think those will forever be my two favorite Lord of the Rings films. So didn't quite make it to that level, but there's some very impressive scenes in it, specifically the barrel scene. I really like that scene a lot in that movie. But just not quite good enough to be in a top 10 list. This film was almost in the top 10 list, and it just got knocked off by another film I saw recently. It was The Wolf of Wall Street by Martin Scorsese. Very impressive film. It's very, very long. I definitely think 45 minutes could have been trimmed out of it. But very impressive film. I mean, I didn't know anything about Jordan Belfort going into it, and I feel like I know his whole life after watching it. So, very good movie for the most part. There's a few little nitpicks I have about it. I do think it is a little too long. Um, I do think Scorsese has made better films, to be honest. Raging Bull and Shutter Island to be examples. Um, but yeah, it's just a little too long, and there's just a few little nitpicks I have about it that just didn't quite make it in the top 10 list. So those are just some honorable mentions I had, you guys. These are runners up for my top 10 list for 2013. They didn't quite make it on there, but I do think that they were worth mentioning and worth talking about. So hope you enjoyed it, and I hope 2014 brings us some good titles. So.